Let's talk about a champion that is super annoying to play against. That is Fiora. It seems that whenever I lane against Fiora and misplay even the tiniest amount, I will get punished and lose half of my HP bar. Lately on my climb, Fiora has been one of those champions that I've been finding a lot of success with. She's great at carrying solo queue games and can absolutely split push your opponent to death. For example, I had an 0-8 bot lane at 10 minutes, which pretty much means death for your team and you are not winning that game. And I was super tilted. I knew that I was winning top, and if they didn't continue to feed their brains out, I would have been able to carry. And in the end, I was actually able to. With some very needed help from Yumi, we were able to turn the game around and win. So if you're looking for another great top laner to carry with in solo queue, then Fiora is definitely the right champion for you. Also, on another note, I know a lot of people have been commentating on the amount of top laners I'm making videos on, and I have two simple reasons for that. The first is that I think top lane is the best lane to climb in below diamond. The amount of pressure you can have on half of the map is tremendous, and the champion pool for top lane is pretty perfect for 1v9ing because you have a lot of bruisers that can do a lot of damage and also tank a lot of damage at the same time. The second is that I also just main top lane. I've been bouncing around between top, mid, and jungle this season, but I always love top lane, and it's a role I keep coming back to. I might have guests on these videos in the future to share some of their experience on specific champions, so stay tuned for that, and make sure to smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm if you want your win rate to increase by 10%. And also make sure you hit the subscribe button as well so you can see all of my Ticket to Diamond videos and thoughts and just guides on how to climb with these different champions in solo queue. Today, I want to start with Fiora's weaknesses first, because I want you guys to understand how she can be countered before we look at how to exploit her strengths in order to get a lot of easy wins. The first weakness that Fiora has is that she's weak against soft CC. And what I mean by soft CC is like silences, a lot of slows, stuff that isn't locked down, and stuff that isn't really easy for her to riposte. This is kind of obvious, but the main reason I wanted to mention it is because usually Fiora players save their W for large CC. Think like Malphite or Orianna ultimate, or just another ability that does damage. So something that I like to do with my W in lane, especially against Darius, is to riposte the Q damage, not his pull. The reason for this is that timing it on my high ping is almost impossible, plus being able to mitigate the damage helps a lot more in duels. But when you're being relentlessly kited by a champion like Ashe or by Anivia, it feels so bad because your lunge isn't long enough to get you out of the radius. And this makes Fiora really kiteable, and like I said in my last Renekton video, when you're being kited by champions with a lot of slows after you've used your Q or without flash, it just feels so bad. You just really want to avoid those situations if all possible. So being against a lot of slows from different champions where there's not a clear thing or clear ability that you need to use your W on can feel really bad and is a great way to counter her. Fiora's second greatest weakness, in my opinion, is that she's super vulnerable when she misses her Q. This should be like duh, but I want to focus on it because I don't see enough people punish her when this happens. If Fiora misses her Q, which means that she does not hit any target like a minion, champion, tower, or ward, it will go on a longer cooldown. This cooldown obviously goes down later in the game based on leveling up the ability and getting more CDR, but especially in the early stages of the game, this cooldown can have a massive effect on her overall damage output and usefulness. This is because Fiora is balanced around her Q. Good Fioras will get shorter cooldowns on this ability by hitting their target, which allows them to be more mobile and hit more of their vitals, which guess what, means more damage. So if a Fiora randomly Qs in lane or in the river, she's at a massive disadvantage. If you engage during this time, all she can do is hit you with autos and try to riposte your damage or CC. She cannot get away from you, and she doesn't have the mobility, because she doesn't have her Q, to get around you and hit vitals, which she needs in order to output any sort of meaningful damage. Fiora's third major weakness is that she's pretty weak against good ranged opponents. Now notice how I said good ranged opponents. If you're against somebody bad or you're against an ADC who's weak, then there's not really a big reason to worry, but if you're even and in a perfect world, it is super easy to get kited because Fiora doesn't have that great of a closer with her Q. And like I said, this really only matters against players who are good at auto spacing and understand when they are in danger. In a pure 1v1, it is hard for Fiora to get on top of an ADC or other squishy ranged champion on her own. Her lunge doesn't have the distance to get her onto the carry, and if they have any form of slow or flash or heal or, oh man, God forbid, Nimbus Cloak, it makes it even harder for Fiora to chase. If she does have flash up and is against a weak opponent, then she's basically able to tank all of the damage and poke before getting on top of the enemy champion, dealing a lot of damage, and then healing it all back up. It just happens like that. But if you're against good ranged opponents like solid ADCs like Caitlyn and Ashe, it's really hard to get on top of them to do the damage. You need your team to be able to apply hard CC for you to get on top of them, or be able to have flash up, kind of like I mentioned in the last Renekton video, in order to get on top of them, do the damage, and get those easy kills. Alright, now let's talk about Fiora's strengths. The thing about Fiora is that she's strong against hard CC. And like I mentioned earlier, she's weak against soft CC, but good against hard CC. Think Malphite, think Maokai, think champions who have one signature ability that they're known for using to disrupt the movement of other champions. She's good against them. And this is all because of her W. Her amazing riposte, which some people might hate, and I totally understand, but this ability, when used properly, can totally change a fight on its head. If you can use it to mitigate the CC from a tank and throw it onto a squishy champion, throw it back onto the tank, or mitigate all of the crowd control together, it can change the duel, it can change the team fight, it can change the Baron fight, and allow you to get all of your damage onto that champion. Instead of just mitigating the damage or mitigating the effect, you actually turn it on its head and back towards the one who casted it. And the thing about Fiora that's so great is that you can target it anywhere that you want. This takes a little bit more skill, but being able to target and direct your W where you want it, at the champion that you want it, can allow you to outplay so many different situations. Her second strength is that she's good against tanks, and this is because of her vitals. Fiora is great against the meta tanks like Ornn, Maokai, even Darius, which is actually more of a skill matchup because of her vitals. When you proc your ultimate, it doesn't matter how much armor they have, it doesn't matter how much health they have, you're going to be dealing true damage, which will allow you to shred all of their HP and get a lot of good kills. Plus, if you can proc this in a fight and get a tank low in a team fight and then allow your team to experience the heal from your ultimate, it's just great. It's such a good bonus for your team. The third strength that Fiora has is that she's a good duelist and split pusher. One of the things I've really enjoyed doing as Fiora when I'm ahead later in the game is to not even group for Baron fights. So say we have the top inhibitor down and we got supers pushing into their base. Instead of fighting 5v5 and going for a 50-50 smite on Baron, I'll just back up into our jungle and teleport into their base to end up taking their Nexus towers and just winning the game. It's so demoralizing when you lose to a backdoor like that it's just worth it in and of itself just for that reason. But in more realistic situations, she can out split push pretty much any other duelist in the game. Zed, Riven, even Jax, if you can play around his Counter-Strike ability, aren't even matches for Fiora if she gets any sort of a lead. She can win all of her duels, she can kill all of the towers, especially after they recently buffed her Q and her E damage towards towers. And if you add Trinity Force and Demolish, you're adding so much damage to these towers and applying an incredible amount of pressure on the map. Yes, you might be on an island and away from your team, but it is actually such a solid and consistent way to win game, which is just to split push. Apply pressure, get kills, knock down towers, and your opponents will feel helpless against what you're doing. Alright, so let's talk about the 3 major tips to carry. The first is that you need a good initial plan with the wave. And the reason that this is so important is because you need to understand how to get those itty bitty leads in the beginning of the game so you can become that late game split pushing monster that you're capable of. So, for example, if you look at Fiora's strengths, you realize that she's really good at chasing down her opponents through the lane, and top lane is a long lane. So if you have a jungler with any sort of awareness, and I can already see the comments, you're all going to say you have no junglers with any sort of awareness, but if you do, and trust me, some of them have a sliver of an idea of what they're doing, they'll come top when the enemy is pushing, but not pushing too hard because then they could 2v1, but enough so where you can apply the pressure and chase them down the lane to get that kill. This means that you want to set up the lane early for your jungler. If your jungler is starting bot at red, you want to set up a pretty solid level 3 gank for yourself. So you want to let the wave push towards you. You want to thin the wave when it's close to your tower and just let them keep applying that pressure into you so that you can end up pushing them and chasing them back down to their tower and hopefully end up getting at least flash or a kill. LS is a great coach that focuses more on the intricacies of what this looks like, and clearly I don't have the time to talk about it, so I'm going to link an LS video in the description where he talks about wave management specifically on Fiora. The second tip to carry is that you need to have solid mid-game pressure. Don't just randomly go mid with your team and ARAM. Sometimes it is advantageous if your team is strong to split push while they take Dragon or Herald, so that you can lure your opponent to you and get a free objective. Other times, grouping is the better option. If you can't 1v1 everybody on the other team and your team just needs that little edge to win, or if you just have great team fighters like Azir or Orianna and they just need a little bit more protection, then yeah, go 5v5 with your team later, especially around major objectives. But in the meantime, you want to be pushing sideways, getting that gold, getting that pressure down on the map so that you can get those wins. The third tip to carry is to continue to split push. I want to emphasize that you're not winning a lot of games on Fiora by just team fighting. You have to understand the pressure that you can apply on the map. Are your carries fed? Then just peel them. Kill those that try to dive them in team fights. Is your ADC worthless? Then flash onto the enemy carries and dish out all of your damage on the backline. Usually flanking is the best strategy for this, so make sure you're looking to TP on a deep flank ward, and even type this in your chat and ask your support to find you a solid TP ward, because that will just totally change the game. It can quite literally, a good TP ward will just win you the game. So keep asking your support for that. And upon asking for it, make sure you're looking for those opportunities to teleport in. All right, guys, with this last section for runes, summoner spells, all that good stuff, just know that all this is going to change over the next couple of years. All of these fundamental principles, unless she's reworked, should stay the same. But her runes, her build, her ability order, this will change over the patches. So make sure you go to op.gg or u.gg or blitz.gg, whatever.gg you want to go to in order to get your information. Make sure you're aware and educated before going into your games. But I'm going to throw up a couple basic stuff for you. You're going to max Q into E into W. Right now, you're going to take Conqueror. You can also take Grasp in some situations, but I think Conqueror is just best. Also, the current build is going Ravenous Hydra into Trinity Force and then Death's Dance. And if you get to that point of getting Death's Dance, you are an absolute monster, by the way. So great item, Riot. Great item. Guys, and I think that's all I have for you. As always, this has been Snowda. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.